Hey, greetings, what's up, everybody? It's GleeCon, and I'm back again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. Thanks for tuning in as we continue the Warcraft movie novel. We read Chapter 8 last time, where the Horde kind of reacted to what was a defeat at the hands of the Alliance, and the Alliance dealt with an interrogation of Garona and one of the Frostwolf clans. So stay a while and listen as we take Chapter 9 and continue this story. Warcraft the movie, the novel. Lothar's mind was a whirlwind as he marched into the throne room. His men, who had known he was interrogating the prisoner about the enemy's position, snapped to attention as he entered. Without preamble, he began firing questions at them. "The Black Morass, what do you think?" Karos raised his eyebrows. "You could hide an army in there." "Or lose one," Varys countered. "You believe it, sir?" "No." It was blunt, and it was true. Lothar had noticed Khadgar's reaction to the female, and he had to admit that she was attractive for all her strangeness, and she wasn't quite like the monsters that had descended with such terrifying violence in Elwyn Forest, but he would be a fool to blindly trust this Garona, and King Lane Rin did not tolerate fools. "But it's what we have to go on," he continued. "Best horses, small escort. Let's see if this orc can be trusted. We leave at dawn." They nodded and hurried off. He watched them go for a moment, then turned back to the throne room. Medivh was there waiting for him. "I won't be going with you," the Guardian said. Lothar ground his teeth. What had happened to Medivh in the last 6 years? He, the Guardian, and the King had been friends. More than friends. Brothers in all but blood. They had fought together, suffered together, been there for him when he had lost. "Well, I need to see what we're up against. You don't think seeing the enemy force firsthand is useful?" He couldn't quite shove back the anger and the concern that fueled it. Medivh didn't meet his gaze. "I have things to attend to." Lothar gave up on subtlety. He marched up to his old friend and looked at him searchingly. "What happened to you today?" It was both true query and an accusation. "I was studying our foe firsthand," the Guardian replied slowly and deliberately. Lothar snorted angrily. "If the kid hadn't been with you, you'd have been studying the edge of an axe." Medivh shrugged laconically. He had it in hand. An idea seemed to occur to him. "You should take him with you. He's more powerful than you think." "Medivh," Lothar began, but there was a flurry of motion, and he found himself talking to a raven. The bird flicked its tail and took wing, soaring out of the window. "I hate it when he does that," Lothar muttered. It was a room in one of Stormwind's inns, not a cell this time, but as he nodded to the guards stationed outside his door, Khadgar accepted the reality that he was, after a fashion, still a prisoner. He did not mind. He was where he wanted to be. Lothar had told him to come to the Black Morass to investigate the lead that Garona had given them. He quickly lit a lamp, his mind racing. Garona, orcs, fell, so much information. As he closed the door and bolted it, Khadgar had to admit he had missed learning things. His life here in Stormwind as an ordinary person was better than being essentially the ultimate errand boy for the Kirin Tor, but it had been rather unstimulating until now. The Black Morass, big enough to hide an army, a good guess for someone who wasn't from this world. That is, if Garona was telling the truth. His thoughts lingered on her for a moment, so strange looking, and yet he was drawn to her. She was so strong, so confident, even though she was a prisoner. But now something else demanded his attention. He reached beneath his shirt and brought out the book he had stashed there what seemed like ages ago. Khadgar had been terrified that it would fall out at some point, but it had stayed secure. Remarkable. He placed it on the rough table, took a breath, and opened it. It was a slim tome with an unprepossessing cover, but the first few pages took his breath away. Runes filled the pages, and as he turned them carefully, his eyes widened as he beheld a lavish illustration. It depicted a wave of creatures that greatly resembled the beasts he had fought today. They were clustered together, a tight unified mass holding weapons of all varieties, and this mass of warriors was pouring forth from an enormous stone structure like water from an upended jug. "A great gate," Khadgar whispered, his skin prickling with goose flesh. His eyes wandered from the sight of the roaring, maddened orcs to the runic text above the art. 2 glyphs had been circled, and someone had scribbled in the margins, "From light comes darkness, and from darkness, light. Ask Aladai." Khadgar repeated the words to himself, unpacking his writing supplies and inking his quill. Taking a deep breath, he laid the thin parchment over the book and began to trace the disturbing image. It was the king's private prison, they had told Garona. It was not a place of torture. There were even windows to the outside and above. The moon shone down, silvering the room, and Garona's heart cracked to see it. It was still a cage, and she was still not free. It was small, and it was barred on 3 sides. There was something called a cot that was intended for sleeping. It was covered with cloths that were strange to her, and she saw no sleeping furs at all. In the corner was a small pot for what she did not know. There was a table and a pitcher of water, along with a uselessly small receptacle. They'd left food for her, also alien, but she had eaten every bite to keep her strength up. Now she lifted the pitcher and drank the cool water. As she placed it down and wiped her mouth, she said to the shadow in the room, "I see you." The one they had addressed as the guardian stood there, his arms folded, his eyes, bright and curious as a bird's, fastened upon her. Now he stepped forward into the light provided by a few torches, walking around her prison. "This gate," he said. "Who showed it to Gul'dan? Who led him to Azeroth?" He cut straight to the heart of the matter. She liked that. Garona debated answering, then said, "Gul'dan called him a demon." The guardian, Medivh, someone had said at one point, did not react. "Did you see it?" It was a memory Garona did not want to revisit. She was quick with languages, but the orc tongue was richer when it came to some things, and she struggled to put the experience into human words. "Not the face, just the voice, like..." Her eyes fell on the flickering torchlight. "Like fire and ash." It did not describe the sound, it described what one felt upon hearing the sound. Very orcish. He ceased his pacing and turned to her, regarding her with eyes that seemed to stare straight into her heart. "How old are you?" The creak of the metal barred door to the room interrupted him. Garona turned briefly to look at it. A rustling sound like a bird's wings brought her attention back to Medivh, but he was gone. A prickling sensation, as of eyes upon her, caused her to look up. A raven perched on the barred window, silhouetted against the full moon, then flew off. Shaman, she thought. Garona took a deep breath and turned to see who else had come to visit her. It was the one called Lothar, who had killed the Frostwolf to protect her, but who later had threatened her. With him was the lone female who had been present during her interrogation earlier. She was so thin and fragile, like a woman made of twigs. Her eyes were large and brown and soft like a talbuk's. She bore a piece of thin wood that held one of the small vessels, and another vessel Garona could not identify. Steam escaped from them. Behind her trailed a servant girl who was even smaller than she, bearing a thick pile of furs. Lothar put a hand on the female's narrow shoulder. "I'm nearby if you need me," he told her, then shot Garona a warning look. The female nodded, stepping back as the guard entered the main area, and stepped briskly to Garona's cell. "Stand back," he ordered the orc. She didn't move for just long enough, then did as he had said, lifting her chin as the female entered. The guard closed the iron bar door, then retreated back into the shadows, watching. "Your mate," Garona said. "I could kill you before he even reaches me." The woman looked confused. She followed Garona's gaze, then laughed. "Lothar, he's my brother. The king is my mate." The king, the leader, Lane. "You are a chieftain's wife, then?" The dark, delicate brows rose at the wording. "I suppose so." Garona stepped closer, towering over her. "Then killing you would bring me even greater honor." Garona watched the female's reaction. She was so frail-seeming, Garona wondered if the words would frighten her. They were certainly true. But the female simply shook her head. "Not among my kind." She nodded to the girl who walked past Garona and placed the furs on the bed. "It's a cold night. I thought you could use these." The girl smelled of fear, but not the chieftain's wife. She moved forward in her long robes, the fabric rustling, and set the items she bore on the table, filling the cup with a hot liquid. She held it out to Garona, who eyed it. "It will warm you," the female said. The beverage smelled clean and herbal, and Garona found herself welcoming the warmth as her hand closed around the ceramic. "It's my favorite. Peace bloom." Garona took a cautious sip, then, finding it delicious, drank it down despite its heat. "More of our villages burned tonight," the female said as Garona drank. "One is the village of my birth." She gnawed her lower lip, then continued. "I see your wounds, old ones, scars. I cannot imagine what horrors you've been through, Garona, but this doesn't need to happen. We've had peace in these lands for many years, peace between races from all over the world." Peace bloom, Garona thought. She wondered if the female had selected the drink intentionally or if it was a simple coincidence. She turned away and picked up a cloak that had been placed atop the furs. The motion made her chains rattle and the manacle about her neck rub. The female extended an uncalloused hand, reaching to touch Garona's throat, saying, "I can have it removed." The orc jerked back, spilling the tea, instantly alert. The chieftain's mate drew her hand back, and her face was unspeakably kind. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. She took a deep breath. There's a life here with us, Garona, if you want it. Only once before had anyone even attempted to touch her with kindness. Another female, Draka, the maid of Durotan. Draka had worn a similar look to Taria's, compassion and anger at what Garona had been forced to endure. She had fled even from Durotan in order to escape her life in the Horde. Garona well knew what she had been running from. Was this what she had been running to? The pebble bounced harmlessly off Durotan's skull. He turned to the orc beside him, raising an eyebrow to see his second-in-command looking unconvincingly innocent. Durotan tried to scowl, but he couldn't keep up the pretense and started laughing. Orgrim joined him. They chuckled like children for a while. "It is good to see trees again," Orgrim said. He and his chieftain were sitting on a rise. Below them was the grunt work going on near the portal and the ugliness of cages filled with human slaves. But above that in the distance lay a scene that was almost reminded Durotan of home. The trees were different, but they still grew straight and tall. They still bore fruit, or smelled fresh and clean. "And the snow," Durotan said, wistfulness creeping into his voice, "even from a distance." Orgrim scratched idly at his healing wounds. "When the humans are beaten, we can journey to the mountains, feel the cold on our skin." He spoke eagerly, and Durotan understood the yearning. Ever since they had left the north of Draenor, he had felt the pang of missing snow. But Durotan had not asked his second-in-command to join him so they might gaze upon a snow-covered mountain together, beautiful though it was. He had brought Orgrim here to remind him what life looked like. Durotan could not find that reminder below, with the cries of the sick, starving humans and their children, and the grueling labor of hauling and carving stones. He rubbed his neck, not relishing the task before him, but there were things that needed to be said. "Remember when we would track cleft-hooves through the Frostwind dunes? Whole herds of them everywhere. And when there were no cleft-hooves, there were talbuks. There was always meat, always life. We would dance in the meadows at midsummer, and even in winter we never hungered. But our world was dying," Orgrim said. "We had to leave. You stayed as long as you could, Durotan, but you knew we had to survive." Thoughts crowded Durotan's mind. What he had to say was dangerous but necessary. His mind went back to when he had made the excruciating decision to follow Gul'dan and the words he had told his clan. There is one law, one tradition which must not be violated, and that is that a chieftain must do whatever is truly best for the clan. "Orgrim, do you not think it strange that we lost our home when Gul'dan came to power?" Orgrim scoffed, prepared to laugh. The smile faded as he realized Durotan was deadly serious. "One orc cannot kill a world, Durotan. Are you sure? Look around you. Does it not remind you of something?" He directed Orgrim's gaze not to the beckoning forest and distant snow, but to what lay behind them, to the great gate and the land around it. Orgrim's brow furrowed for a moment in confusion, and then Durotan saw understanding spread across his friend's face. When they had entered this world, the land near the gate had been a swamp. Draka had birthed the son of Durotan on her hands and knees in stagnant water. Now there was only dirt, parched and thirsty. What plants there had been were long dead, brittle and grounded dust beneath orcish feet as Durotan's people moved giant stones to build a doorway. It did remind him of something. It looked exactly as the other side of the portal had looked in the land they had fled. Emotions warred on Orgrim's face. Durotan knew what he was asking, but he also knew he was right. Wherever Gul'dan works his magic, the land dies. If our people are to make a home here, my friend, Durotan said, his voice rough with emotion, Gul'dan must be stopped. Orgrim took a long time before he replied, but when he did not disagree. All he said was, "We are not powerful enough to defeat Gul'dan." "No," Durotan agreed. He scratched thoughtfully at his chin with a sharp thumbnail. "But with the humans' help, we could be." All right, so a potential alliance getting ready to be formed between certain members of the Horde and the Alliance. And we will see how that shakes out on the next episode of Lore of Warcraft. As always, thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope that you are enjoying it as much as me. See you guys next time on the next episode of Lore of Warcraft. This one, in the pipe, 5x5.